This program is brought to you in part by the Eugenie and Joseph Jones Family Foundation, a local foundation proud to support education, the arts, and culture in the greater New Orleans area.
Support for this program comes from the Gail and Tom Benson Charitable Foundation, committed to funding educational causes.
Informed Sources is made possible in part by Susie and Pierre G. Villery.
We count on Informed Sources to continue the discussion on important local issues.
It's where our top journalists discuss stories they've covered. Stay informed with Informed Sources.
Hello, I'm Marcia Cavanaugh. Thanks so much for joining us. Well, we will hear today about the memories of a veteran political journalist, Clancy DuBos, who has many stories to tell, ranging from Edwin Edwards to Helena Moreno. There are recollections about victories and indictments, but always the rhythm of a lively political culture. In other news, we will hear about welcome news about lighting in eastern New Orleans and spotlights cast on Louisianians at the Grammy Awards. Joining us are Errol, Laborde, producer of Informed Sources, Clancy DuBos, political journalist, most recently with WWL Louisiana Channel 4 and Gambit, and LeBron Joseph, news anchor and reporter, WGNO-TV Channel 26. And we will stick with LeBron because there is lighting now.
There is lighting. There is a lot of lighting.
Let there be light.
Let there be more light, please. The Lights On campaign from Mayor Helena Moreno. This is one of those things that as a candidate, you want to be able to make a difference, certainly the first 100 days or whatever, and she's delivering on this campaign promise to make a difference in the lives of people that live here. Big hire, Deputy CAO of Infrastructure and Public Works, Steve Nelson, who came over from Sewerage and Water Board. He was heading a number of those projects, the big Claiborne Avenue corridor project that was just completed, and some others. Well, they have, to this point, and we're only in the second month of the year, they claim 650 streetlights have been turned on. And the initial part of this project was actually street level lighting. Steve Nelson said that it was initially driven by safety information. In other words, there are hot spots around the city, New Orleans East and other places, where in fact the lack of lighting was a safety issue in these hot spots where we're continuing to report on these crimes happening in shootings, the Willow Apartments, Downman and Chef, MLK and South Claiborne Avenue. Lighting up those places means something. They wanted to make a difference with that type of stuff. And they are at this point. To the credit of the Cantrell administration, the last couple of years or the last year and a half, and I think this was ARPA funding, they actually did a pretty decent job of lighting the interstate New Orleans East past basically the Crowder exit, right on out to maybe Little Woods. But in terms of the street level lighting, they weren't doing too good a job there. You know, the big culprit in a lot of this are a couple of things. The normal, Hurricane Ida, the storms that we have, or the winds or whatever. But the other one is a man-made error here in the thefts, the copper thefts. They've shifted gears in a lot of copper thefts, not only on the street level lighting, but on the interstate as well. This has been a real menace. I think I saw a Jefferson Parish story this week that they are facing some of the same issues of copper thefts. And I don't know how you get copper out of a street light. I'd be scared to death to touch that electricity. But that was the devil getting to these metropolitan areas, people stealing that. They've shifted from using copper wiring to the idea of using aluminum, which is less valuable at a scrapyard or something like that. And so that's a big deal.
How easy is it for someone to steal copper on an interstate? I mean, doesn't somebody see them passing by or something? Or
I imagine so, Errol. But it's also very dangerous. And I guess if you're passing someone who's messing with a light on I guess you could call the police or whatever. But it's the most ridiculous theft I've ever heard of. I'm not getting out of my car.
They must have stolen all the copper gutters out of the city. They have to resort to wiring because,
That is
you know,
correct.
even heavy-duty industrial wiring is not that thick.
And it's not a lot.
And it's not a lot of copper for your
Yeah.
effort. You know, if you steal copper gutters, or not that I'm advising thieves, they know this. Let's face it. But because I'm doing a big renovation right now, and I moved all my copper wiring inside the building. And replace it with PEX, which is a expandable plastic type of piping that doesn't freeze. Or handles a hard freeze as well.
And easier to replace if in fact or repair.
But still, that's a lot of effort. So they must be getting desperate.
Yeah, and the issue to try to prevent that is to harden those places where in fact people are stealing copper and using possibly concrete and other things to sort of be able to cover them, moving them up higher, that it's out of the place of someone being able to jump out of a car and pop the lid off of something. This information initially, as Mr. Nelson said, being driven by the safety data of these different hotspots and all that, but also the backlog of 311 calls. Folks calling in, you know, and there are months of those, if not years. Hey, the street light's broken on my street. Can we please get that fixed? And, you know, the safety issues across the board. So it's a big deal. It's a difference that's being made, and happily for residents in these neighborhoods that it's happening. And, you know, you've got to give credit where credit is due. The mayor says she wanted to be able to do something like this, and this is one of those things, tangible things that voters can see.
Okay, and the momentum will continue?
Yeah, the momentum will continue because she found $2.8 million of Entergy fines, which will now support the interstate lights that are out. And so that's the second part of this, and just unveiled that this week.
And now everybody can see everything.
Lights on. Now, do we really want to see? I think we do.
Okay, yes, we do. All right, thanks a lot, LeBron. Okay, Clance, over to you, because Clancy is really retired now. Absolutely. It's hard to believe. You've been in the media scene for how long? Local media scene?
More than 52 and a half years.
You've covered a lot of stories. How'd you get started in this business?
Well, it started at a very early age for me when my third grade teacher, Miss Kay Lyons, told me I was going to be a writer.
She was right.
Well, I had a schoolboy crush on my third grade teacher, so if she said I was going to be a writer, I said, okay, I got to be a writer. I think it's because whenever she gave us a writing assignment, I always tried to turn it into something humorous, and she got a kick out of that. But anyway, I didn't have any direction about writing until I got to Holy Cross High School. And near the end of my freshman year, there was an announcement in the afternoon that if you wanted to try out for the school newspaper, show up at room 9. So I went, and there was Ken Heckler, who I'd never met before, but he wound up being a legendary journalism teacher at Holy Cross, and he gave me focus. He gave me direction as a writer. He taught me how to write, you know, in the AP style. He taught journalism out of the AP style book. And throughout my career, I was always proud to say the only journalism courses I ever took were at Holy Cross High School. And Mr. Heckler taught 2 Pulitzer Prize winners in journalism. One of them is Renee Sanchez, who is the editor of the Times-Picayune and the Advocate. I'm not one of them, but that's okay. I was just honored to be taught by Kenny. And sadly, he's no longer with us, but he taught generations of people who went into the communications business, whether it was reporters, videographers, camera people, communications specialists, PR people, directed, you know, dozens of people in that industry, and left quite a mark. And so that's what gave me some focus. And then after my freshman year of college at LSUNO, which was then LSUNO, later UNO, and now LSU New Orleans, our alma mater, Errol. How about you, LeBron?
No, Loyola.
Well, Loyola's wonderful.
Close enough.
But Ralph Romagera, a former UPI photographer who worked for the Times-Picayune, got me a job as a summer intern. I was 18 years old, so wet behind the ears, so green. But I went there, and at the end of the summer, I was supposed to just, you know, the internship was over, but I wanted to stay on. I was loving this. This was my dream. I couldn't believe I was 18 years old writing for a newspaper. And I went into the office of the associate editor and asked if I could stay on, and he said, well, you know, we're supposed to fire you at the end of the summer. And I said, fire me? Oh my God. I was like, what did I do wrong? He said, no. I mean, you know, we're supposed to, you know. He said, I'll tell you what, you just keep showing up, and if they keep paying you, just keep coming in. Well, I did that. And 2.5 years later, in my senior year, spring semester, I was taking a light load. I said, I want to go full time. And the editor said, okay, let me go downstairs and work that out. And he came back upstairs with a folder. It had one piece of paper in it. It was my application for an internship in 1973. He said, you've never been officially hired here. I said, well, y'all keep paying me, so I keep showing up. You know, what the heck? So they created a spot for me, and that was it.
And
that
so
got
our
me
career was launched. And so
officially.
you moved from the paper and you went into broadcast.
You know what?
We worked together at WGNO.
Thanks to the Gridiron Show, I went into television. Charlie Ziwi saw me at the Gridiron Show and knew that I was, at the time I was a City Hall reporter for the Times-Picayune, the States item. The papers had merged in 1980, and by the end of 1981, they were looking for somebody to kind of fill the shoes of Iris Kelso, who had been a legendary on-air political reporter, as Rosemary James was at WWL. And he said, we need a full-time political writer. You should come try this out. And I said, I don't know if I can do that. He says, look, if you can get up on the Gridiron Show live and do all this shenanigans.
Being a wild and crazy guy.
Everything except singing. I said, as long as I don't have to sing, I'm fine. He said, you can do TV. You'll always land on your feet. And so with Charlie's encouragement, I got a job at Channel 6 and did that, and then went to law school in '89 to '93, moved over to Channel 8, and then moved over to Channel 4 after Katrina. So I bounced around, but once, and Gambit, of course, I started Gambit. When I left the Times-Picayune and started at Channel 6, I went to see Gary Esselin over at Gambit and said, how about a political columnist for every week? And he said, oh, great idea. So I never was out of print until I retired a year ago, 13 months ago from print.
And now you are officially retired.
I'm out of it all.
WWL.
I'm done.
Too. Okay, so the launch of a great journalist over all these years, and you've covered a lot. So let's take a look at some of the things that really stick out to you.
Well, Errol, thank you for inviting me on here. It's a real honor. He said, put together the 7 most memorable stories. And I'm like, oh, God, why did he come up with 7? How am I going to come up with 7? So
10 is too long and 7.
Yeah, 5 is not enough.
And 7 is too short.
There you go. Well, so here we go. Starting with the most memorable story, and it's Hurricane Katrina. I think has to be the one that looms over everything, as it does for everybody's memory in New Orleans. It's more than a story, of course, because it continues to unfold. I didn't really cover the storm itself in terms of, what's the coordinates and all that, but I covered the aftermath on many levels, everything ranging from, neighborhoods trying to recover to my alma mater, Holy Cross, being in the lower 9th Ward, and because I was chairman of the board at Holy Cross at that time, so we had to strategize about, are we going to come back? And we always knew we would come back, but we moved over to Paris Avenue, and Mary Landrieu helped us with lots of money from FEMA. But also, citizens everywhere were struggling. Everything from the Road Home program to FEMA's, shortcomings, the Stafford Act, all that. And it continues to unfold. There are parts of New Orleans East, parts of the lower 9 that have not yet fully recovered. So 20 years down the road, we're still covering Katrina stories. That's the overarching easy choice for number 1. Number 2, I would call the rise and fall of Edwin Edwards. Now, I didn't cover his first election in 1972. I became a reporter in May of '73, but he was a very popular governor. He went through his legislative session and got CC 73, the Constitutional Convention, approved. And while I didn't cover the day-to-day stuff, I covered the election to the statewide election for citizens to ratify the proposed Constitution. And that was a big story, and it's made a big difference. But Edwin Edwards, the guy, people didn't give him a chance when he first ran, and this Cajun guy, and he wound up sweeping into office and becoming easily the most popular governor since Huey Long. And I think he's had every bit as much of an impact on Louisiana politics as Huey Long, and started covering his legislative sessions starting in 1974, and then his downfall when he was indicted, covered his first indictment when he beat the rap in 1985, and then later on, after his 4th term, which no other governor has had, elected and served 4 full terms, got in, they raided his home. I think it was in 1996 or 7, and you know, and raided his home, and then a few years later indicted him, then his trial, convicted in the year 2000, went to jail, came out, ran again, didn't get anywhere, but, you know, it was like a bell curve, you know, going up and going down, and I didn't cover the beginning of it, but I caught it on the upswing and covered all of the downfall, and it was quite a story in Louisiana.
Let's move on to 3.
Okay, number 3, another big one, the upstairs lounge fire. That story had a really big impact on me. I was 6 weeks into my internship in June of 1973 when an arsonist set fire to the upstairs lounge, which was a gay bar for men that was not well known, and this was before even the term gay had come into vogue. And what struck me, not only the fire itself, but what really stuck with me were the images of the fire plus the indifference shown by the public, whether it was City Hall, the Archdiocese of New Orleans, cops, prosecutors. Nobody really cared about these folks, and it really stuck with me and made me, over the course of my career, more determined to give voice to the voiceless. And that really, really impacted me. Even as a straight guy, I just thought this was a horrible thing.
It was.
The next thing would be Dutch Morial, his historic election as mayor in 1977, took office in 78. He was a transformational mayor, and he mentored an entire generation of future leaders. He also ushered in an era of black empowerment, not just in New Orleans, but statewide, because I used to say back then, the guy's more than a mayor, he's more than a man, he's a symbol to black voters. LeBron, you lived through that too, you know?
It was huge.
And I can't speak as a black person, but I know a lot of black folks who can, and I'm just echoing what I've heard from them.
You're absolutely right on, spot on. Dutch Morial was the largest figure, transformational. I remember those elections, I remember the radio spots, I remember the whole thing, the get out the vote effort and all that, and you're right, mentored an entire generation of black leaders in the city.
And he had to kick in the door to get into the room. But after him, the door was opened.
That is exactly
and that's what made him so transformational. The next would be, I would call the rise of the Republican Party in Louisiana. When I first became a reporter in 1973, you know, Republicans were unicorns in state politics. Now, try to find a white Democrat in the state legislature. There are a few, but they walk around with a little horn out of their. I mean, they are rare. You know, but it's also the end of coalition politics in Louisiana, in the legislature and at the ballot box. You know, we used to be, Louisiana was the last southern state to still have a statewide elected Democrat, and that was Mary Landrieu, and then John Bell Edwards. Who I just had lunch with an hour and a half ago.
Oh, really?
Relationships used to matter more than party.
Across the aisle and everything, you're right.
There was no aisle. It was just everybody was, you know, they could disagree, but then the person you disagreed with today in the legislature could be your staunchest ally 3 days later on an important measure. It's not like that anymore. It's all up and down the line, party politics, and people who were in office in that generation really regret the way things have gone. They're very sorry to see it go that way. But that's the way it is. And the next big story, I think, would be charter schools. After Katrina, and it's part of the Katrina story, but it really deserves mention all by itself. New Orleans has been a petri dish for charter schools, and it's a national symbol, a national example of what can happen. And look, there's good and bad. And what I've told people from the get-go is charters are not a silver bullet. Charter schools are a governance model. That's all they are. It's how you govern the school, whether it's a centralized model, as most public schools are. You have a school board elected, and that central school board governs all of the schools in the district, or you decentralize it where each school operates more or less like a private school, except it's a publicly funded school. And that's been a source of tension about how they function. And it's very interesting. And then seventh, you know, there were so many scandals in Louisiana, I could never just identify one. So the seventh story would be all the scandals. And I'm going to just list a few of them, okay? Bill Jefferson and his siblings. The 3 insurance commissioners in a row who got indicted, Sherman Bernard, Doug Green, and Jim Brown, Ray Nagin, LaToya Cantrell, Oliver Thomas, various Orleans Parish School Board members, and then suburban officials for their scandal, Aaron Broussard, Eddie Price, former St. Tammany DA Walter Reed, and Sheriff Jack Strain. folks in the river parishes and Plaquemines Parish, St. Bernard officials. You know, it's not like New Orleans was the Lone Ranger on this, okay? There were scandals all over East Louisiana and all over Louisiana.
All over Metro New Orleans, for sure. You know, listening to you list all of these stories and talking about all of these scandals, et cetera, and you covered all of this stuff. Obviously, there was never a shortage of news for you to cover.
I'm fond of saying to people that there's never a recession in Louisiana politics. There's always some stuff going on. I'm cleaning it up. But
Clancy, in an era where, in fact, corporations own these big television stations and radio stations and all of that.
That's another big one.
How have you been able to be the independent voice that you are? And I'm sure part of it is era, but, you know, it meant something to hear. What does Clancy have to say about this?
Wow. Well, first of all, thank you for those kind words, LeBron. I think for Gambit, I have to thank Gambit for that, because when my wife and I were able to buy Gambit, and let me tell you, we didn't have 2 nickels to rub together to make a dime, but a lady who was our investor, who later became one of our best friends, Nancy Marsiglia, was our chief investor there, and enabled us to buy the paper and operate it. And even when we bought her out, she helped us with the loan. I mean, that's the definition of an angel investor. But that gave me a certain level of independence. But also the stations I worked at, whether it was Channel 6, Channel 8, and then for the last almost 20 years, Channel 4, I remember the words of Chris Slaughter, who he and I sort of put our heads together and came up with the idea of Clancy's commentary. And I was inspired by Phil Johnson.
Oh, yeah.
I said, why don't we do an editorial? And he said, I'll tell you what, we don't want to do a WWL editorial. Why don't you just make it your stuff, and we'll call it Clancy's commentary. That was his idea, not mine. I was all about, let's do this for the station. He said, no, make it Clancy's commentary. And I said, well, how do you want me to do this? And this is what I remember. He said, swing for the fences.
Nice.
I said, wow. I mean, and it was a great compliment, but also I was like, wow, I got to really be careful here. I don't want to mess this up, you know. And it was flattering that they trusted me. I mean, look, I had a law degree in the meantime. I knew First Amendment law. I knew exactly how far I could go, or I think I knew how far I could go in saying something, criticizing people without crossing the line into defamation. I could back up what I was saying, and they gave me the freedom to do that, and it was a great compliment, but a great responsibility as well.
Let me jump in there too, I'll echo what LeBron said, that people across the community would say, well, what does Clancy think about this? Or did you see what Clancy had to say about that? You just really did not only inform, but you explained a lot. You've been really important to the journalistic landscape, certainly, of our community. And I think you enjoyed it.
That means so much coming from all of you guys, and thank you so much. You know, the irony is, when I sat in front of my computer, I used to go through a little ritual. I said, before I put my fingers on the keyboard, I want to just purge myself of whatever biases I might have, or at least try to, and just try to talk to people and give them facts, because they're counting on me. I don't want to let them down. Yes, I've got my opinions, and it'll show if I'm going to give my opinion, but I want to give them facts and give them something they can count on. And you know, I just hope that I did that. I can't judge whether I did or I didn't, but thank you for those kind words.
It means a lot. You did.
We certainly are going to miss you, but you deserve this retirement. You and Margot go have a good time.
Margot's got a long honeydew list, let me tell you.
Good to you.
Thanks, Clance.
Thank you all.
It's wonderful hearing these stories. LeBron, let's wrap with you, because there was some good news about the Grammys in Louisiana.
Yeah, good news. There was one category of the Grammys, which was all Louisiana artists, so somebody was going to win that. And I'll get to that in just a second. But Jon Batiste wins his 7th Grammy, and he wins it in the category Best Americana Album. And I mean, he'd won that Album of the Year thing a few years ago, which was huge. First local artist to pull that off, but he really kind words about this particular category. Americana sort of includes roots music, blues, and the whole nine. So he said to win that and to be embraced by that category was by that community was really great.
Yeah, he's just so joyous.
Exactly.
Really,
I mean, you want to root for him. PJ Morton also. So that's Jon Batiste's 7th, by the way. PJ Morton wins his 6th. with the best gospel album he did with a duet with a guy by the name of Darrell Walls. So that is also pretty good. He's still doing his thing. A name many folks don't know, but also a New Orleans native, Sullivan Fortner, who's a NOCA alum, won Best Jazz Instrumental. And the name of his album is actually Southern Nights, and there's a version of the Alan Toussaint song on there. Beautiful thing, his second Grammy. Buddy Guy, the blues master, wins his 9th for Best Traditional Blues Album. And the album that actually is going to award more Grammys than anything is an album called A Tribute to the King of Zydeco. And it's a tribute album to Clifton Chenier, who died back in 1987. But he was the father of what we know as Zydeco music today. And probably 2 or 3 dozen artists performing on this album, including the Rolling Stones, who did a song. John Cleary did a song. There are a number of folks.
Mick Jagger sang in French, didn't he?
He certainly did, and a lot of his performances, and you know, his music. I did a piece on Clifton Chenier. Oh my God! 10 years ago, we used to do the Giants of the Fest pieces, and Quint Davis just spoke glowingly of him. That he turned the stage into something else. This guy could sing as good as B.B. King or any of those things, but he was singing Zydeco and a lot of the music in French. So
great recognition for our Louisiana artists. Congratulations
we
to all
continue
of
to
them.
churn them out.
We sure do.
The
Okay.
Grammys.
All right, E, around the table. Other stories.
Well, LeBron was talking earlier about lighting and bringing back more lighting. Next week at this time is the parade of Le Coup d'Etat. One thing Le Coup d'Etat is proud of is that they were the ones that introduced blinkies to parades. And I have a Le Coup d'Etat.
Okay, there you go.
You
got an original, huh?
And so,
Why are we not surprised that you got
whenever
that?
it passes, like if you're by Gallia Hall, you'll see the whole street blinking because of the blinkies. Just want to acknowledge just quickly with Clancy's involvement with Holy Cross. I was at the first parade after Katrina when Holy Cross came back with its new band uniforms that had been destroyed.
Nice.
And they passed by and they played that fight song, which is Notre Dame song. Very, very touching moment.
Very exciting.
We like to say Notre Dame, we happily donated our fight song to Notre Dame.
Okay, you two, real quick. Other stories. You got anything to add?
Well, I'm just excited. I've been wearing my Saints jacket because Drew Brees got in the
Hooray
Hall of
for
Fame
Drew.
on the first ballot. And favorite Mardi Gras memories, I know you did it last week, but when I was a little kid, my family used to go to the Elks Club because I had a great aunt and uncle who belonged to the Elks Club. We were up on the 2nd or 3rd floor building on St. Charles Avenue where the Elks Club was, and the parades would come by and we'd lean out the window and try to catch beads. What a great memory that was.
Wonderful memory.
Fantastic.
Okay.
All right, first weekend, big one of Mardi Gras, and I always try to shoot out the parents and chaperones. We forget about them. We love the bands and the cheers and the this and the that. But some of those parents that are walking, their feet are hurting. So give them a shout.
Oh, God bless those parents.
Okay. All right,
Parents
guys.
out there.
This has been a great show. Good luck, Clancy. Congratulations with everything
Thank
you've
you.
accomplished. And best of luck to you and Margot. Thanks a lot, guys, for joining us. And we'll see you again next week for Informed Sources. Have a good evening.
Informed Sources is made possible in part by Susie and Pierre G. Villery.
We count on Informed Sources to continue the discussion on important local issues.
It's where our top journalists discuss stories they've covered. Stay informed with Informed Sources.
Support for this program comes from the Gail and Tom Benson Charitable Foundation, committed to funding educational causes.
This program is brought to you in part by the Eugenie and Joseph Jones Family Foundation, a local foundation proud to support education, the arts, and culture in the greater New Orleans area.